The GAAC Critical Control Certification, often shortened to GCCC, is built around one of the most practical ideas in cybersecurity. Organizations need a clear way to decide which security work matters most. That sounds simple, but in real environments, security can quickly become a confusing mix of tools, policies, alerts, audit requests, vendor promises, leadership concerns, and technical cleanup work. This certification focuses on the CIS critical security controls and how those controls can be used to build, assess, and improve a security program. This episode is part of the Monday Certified feature from Bare Metal Cyber Magazine, and the goal is to help you understand where this certification fits, what the exam really tests, and whether it belongs in your own career path.
If this certification is on your study list, a free and complete audio course is available in the Bare Metal Cyber Academy at baremetalcyber.com, complete with a study guide and a second ebook featuring 1,000 flashcard questions.
GCCC is different from a general awareness certification because it is not mainly about recognizing basic cybersecurity vocabulary. It is about connecting security controls to actual defensive work. The exam is built around the CIS critical security controls, which provide a prioritized set of safeguards for reducing common and high-impact security risks. The controls help organizations answer practical questions. What assets do we have? What software is installed? Who has access? Are systems configured securely? Are vulnerabilities being managed? Are logs available when something goes wrong? Can the organization recover? Are third-party service providers being managed with security in mind? Those questions are not abstract. They show up every day in security operations, audit discussions, risk reviews, incident response planning, and leadership briefings.
The credential is issued by GIAC, an organization with a strong reputation in cybersecurity certification. GIAC credentials are generally known for being focused, serious, and connected to applied security knowledge. GCCC sits in a practical middle ground between technical security work and governance-focused security work. It is not only for auditors, and it is not only for hands-on security analysts. It is useful for people who need to understand how technical safeguards, policies, evidence, and risk reduction fit together. That includes security analysts, information technology administrators, risk professionals, compliance staff, auditors, consultants, federal contractors, and early career professionals who want to understand security as a program rather than as a pile of disconnected tasks.
A good way to think about this certification is to see it as a controls literacy credential. It helps you understand what a security control is trying to accomplish, why that control matters, how it might be implemented, and how an organization might prove that it is working. For example, asset inventory is not just a list of computers. It supports vulnerability management, incident response, software control, access decisions, and recovery planning. Account management is not just a help desk process. It affects privilege abuse, insider risk, cloud access, auditability, and the organization's ability to remove access when someone changes roles or leaves. Logging is not just something systems generate in the background. It supports detection, investigation, compliance, and lessons learned after an incident.
This is why GCCC can be useful fairly early in a cybersecurity career. Many learners study attacks, tools, and technical terms before they fully understand how security programs are organized. That is natural, but it can leave a gap. You may know what malware is, or what multi-factor authentication is, or what vulnerability scanning is, but still not understand how those pieces support a larger control framework. This certification helps close that gap. It encourages you to think in terms of prioritized defense. Instead of asking which security product should come next, it pushes you to ask which controls reduce the most risk, how those controls should be implemented, and how the organization can measure whether they are actually operating.
The exam content is centered on CIS Controls version 8. That matters because version 8 reflects modern security realities, including cloud services, service providers, distributed assets, and a broader view of enterprise technology. The control areas include inventory of enterprise assets, inventory of software, data protection, secure configuration, account management, access control, vulnerability management, audit log management, email and web browser protections, malware defenses, data recovery, network infrastructure management, network monitoring and defense, security awareness, service provider management, application software security, incident response management, and penetration testing. That is a lot of material, but the real point is not to memorize a list. The real point is to understand how these areas work together.
The exam rewards applied understanding. A candidate needs to know what each control is for, but also how it supports security outcomes. You might see questions that require you to recognize the purpose of a safeguard, the relationship between different controls, or the type of evidence that could support an audit or review. You may need to think through implementation priorities, operational trade-offs, or the difference between having a policy and actually operating a control. This is where the certification becomes more interesting than a simple checklist exercise. It is not just asking whether an organization has a control written down. It is asking whether the control is meaningful, implemented, monitored, and connected to risk reduction.
One common misconception is that this certification is only for compliance teams. It is certainly relevant to compliance and audit work, but it is broader than that. Technical professionals can also benefit because the controls translate security goals into operational tasks. If you work in system administration, endpoint management, cloud operations, network operations, identity management, or vulnerability management, these controls help explain why your work matters. They also help you communicate with leaders and auditors in a more structured way. Instead of saying that a task is important because security people care about it, you can connect the task to a recognized control objective and a measurable security outcome.
Another misconception is that passing the exam is mainly about memorizing the control names. Memorization helps, but it is not enough. The stronger approach is to learn each control as a practical security story. Start with the problem the control is trying to solve. Then learn the safeguards that support it. Then ask what implementation would look like in a real organization. Then ask how you would test or audit it. For example, when studying vulnerability management, do not stop at the idea that organizations should scan for vulnerabilities. Think about asset scope, scan frequency, prioritization, remediation timelines, exceptions, reporting, and how leadership would know whether the program is improving. That kind of thinking is much closer to what the exam is trying to measure.
The current exam is commonly listed as a proctored exam with 75 questions over 2 hours, with a minimum passing score of 71%. It is delivered through GIAC exam processes and may be taken with remote or on-site proctoring options depending on availability and candidate setup. The exam is time-limited, so preparation should include both content study and practice with careful reading. 2 hours may sound generous, but it can go quickly if every question turns into a long internal debate. During study, practice identifying what the question is asking, eliminating answers that are security-related but not control-aligned, and choosing the answer that best supports the control objective.
A practical study plan should begin with structure. First, learn the purpose of the CIS controls and how version 8 is organized. Then build a plain English summary of each control. After that, connect each control to real work you have seen or can imagine. Ask yourself what the control would mean in a small business, a large enterprise, a cloud environment, a managed service provider relationship, or a federal contractor setting. Then move into exam review by testing your weak areas. The goal is to move from recognition to understanding to application. If you only recognize the control names, you may feel prepared too early. If you can explain how the controls support one another, you are moving in the right direction.
Hands-on practice can help, even though this is not a lab-heavy exam in the same way as some technical certifications. You can use a home lab, a small business example, a sample network, or even a cloud account as a mental model. Look at the environment and ask how the controls would apply. What systems are present? What software is installed? Which accounts exist? Who has administrative access? Are backups in place? Are logs collected? Are vulnerabilities being tracked? What service providers matter? What would happen during an incident? How would you prove that each control is operating? These questions make the material more concrete and help you remember the control logic.
For busy professionals, the Bare Metal Cyber Academy resources can fit naturally into the study process. The free audio course can help you absorb the big ideas while commuting, walking, or handling routine tasks. The study guide can give you a more structured written path through the controls and exam topics. The flashcards ebook can support short review sessions when you need to reinforce definitions, control purposes, and key relationships. Used together, the resources support a simple rhythm. Listen for understanding, read for structure, review for memory, and practice for confidence. The point is not to cram everything at once. The point is to create repeated contact with the material until the controls start to feel connected.
Time management during preparation is important. Because the control list is broad, weak areas can hide inside familiar language. You may think you understand access control, for example, but the exam may expect you to distinguish between account management, access rights, administrative privileges, authentication, authorization, and review evidence. You may think you understand logging, but still need to know why log collection, retention, review, alerting, and investigation support different parts of security operations. When you find a weak area, do not just reread the same paragraph. Reframe the topic. Write a short explanation in your own words. Connect it to another control. Imagine how you would explain it to a manager who is asking why the work matters.
Career-wise, GCCC can support several paths because security controls sit at the center of many roles. A security analyst can use it to show that they understand the program behind daily alerts and tickets. An information technology administrator can use it to show that they are thinking beyond uptime and routine configuration. An auditor can use it to strengthen their understanding of technical control implementation. A risk analyst can use it to connect control maturity to business exposure. A consultant can use it to explain security priorities in a way that is structured, practical, and defensible.
Hiring managers will not usually treat this certification as a replacement for experience. That is true of almost every certification. What it can do is signal that you understand a respected control framework and can talk about security improvement in practical terms. That matters in organizations where security teams need to prioritize limited resources, justify investments, prepare for audits, improve reporting, and communicate across technical and non-technical groups. If you can explain why asset inventory affects incident response, or why service provider management matters for enterprise risk, you can contribute to better security conversations.
In a broader certification path, this credential often fits after foundational knowledge and before deeper specialization. Someone might begin with a broad security or networking credential, then use GCCC to understand control-based defense. After that, the next move depends on career direction. A learner who wants more technical depth might pursue security operations, incident response, or cloud security credentials. Someone moving toward audit might consider CISA. Someone moving toward management or governance might look at CISM, CRISC, or other risk-focused credentials. The value of GCCC is that it gives those later choices a stronger control foundation.
It is also worth knowing when this certification may not be the best first choice. If your immediate goal is hands-on penetration testing, a dedicated offensive security path may be more direct. If your goal is cloud engineering, a platform-specific cloud certification may be more urgent. If you are brand new to information technology and still learning networking, operating systems, and basic security vocabulary, you may want a more foundational starting point first. GCCC becomes most useful when you already have enough context to appreciate why security controls matter and how they are implemented across real environments.
The big takeaway is that this certification is about disciplined security thinking. It helps you move from scattered security tasks to a prioritized program view. It teaches you to ask better questions about assets, access, configuration, vulnerabilities, logging, recovery, service providers, applications, incidents, and testing. It also helps you understand why controls are not just compliance paperwork.
When implemented well, controls become the operating structure of a defensible security program. For early career professionals, that kind of understanding can be a real advantage. Tools change, job titles change, and frameworks evolve, but organizations will always need people who can connect risk, controls, operations, and evidence. GCCC is a useful option for learners who want to build that connection deliberately. With steady study, practical examples, and a structured review plan, the exam can become more than a certification target. It can become a way to understand how security work turns into measurable improvement.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.